trying to see if I'm here. Let me know if you can see me, hear me. Good afternoon, Narendra. No, you have left that message at 2:38. It is very in advance. Okay, hi, I'm Shree. I'm your English educator for grades 11 and 12. Today we are doing grade 11 portions. We have just successfully completed our portions for Hornbill, so we are moving on to the snapshots. And we're going to be starting with the very first snapshots lesson today. But before we get into it, I just want to let you know really quickly that these are the times that we meet, 3 to 4 every day except Sunday. Mondays, Thursdays and Fridays we do grade 12 portions, and Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays we do grade 11 portions. I also want to quickly let you know about something called the Combat Scholarship that is currently going on at Unacademy right now. You will see a link for it in the description box below. It is an absolutely free test, and you can sign up for it by hitting that link in the description box. And if you sign up for this test and you do well at this test, then you can win scholarships worth up to 1 crore. So it's a good chance to revise, and it's a great reward at the end of it. So if you want to just give some tests a shot just because you have some time, then you should go ahead and definitely do that. You don't need to pay for this or anything. You just need to sign up, and the link is in the description box below, as I said. Oh, hello Mahanand, you can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Is this loud enough? Okay, I'm going to hope really hard that this is loud enough. Let me know if you can't hear me, like Mahanand just did. And I will speak louder. Also, let me know if you need me to slow down, if you need me to explain something specific to you, things like that. Any questions are welcome. Leave them in the chat, and I will take a look at it every couple of slides once we cover like a bunch of paragraphs. So we're going to be doing snapshots just the way that we did Hornbill, which is to say that we're going to be reading the entire story together. Some of these stories are a bit longer than the ones in Hornbill, so that means we'll have like 2 sessions to cover a story so that we can read the entire story without compromising on the quality of attention that we pay to each paragraph. We'll take it slow, we'll read each paragraph, understand what's happening in the paragraph, and then we will go ahead and discuss some themes that paragraph throws up for us. And today we're starting with The Summer of the Beautiful White Horse by William Saroyan. William Saroyan is this Armenian-American author, and in this particular story he is writing about Armenia, and we will read about it very soon. This is part 1 of the lesson. We'll be doing half of the lesson today. So let's get started. One day, back there in the good old days when I was 9 and the world was full of every imaginable kind of magnificence, and life was still a delightful and mysterious dream. The very first thing that we find out is when the story is set, and it is a day back in the good old days when the narrator of this story was 9 years old. And what does the narrator associate with being 9? He associates a time when the world is full of every kind of magnificence. Magnificence, good things, beautiful things, brilliant things. And a point of time when life still seemed beautiful and sort of unknown and sort of dreamlike and not weighed down by like burdens or reality, right? My cousin Murad, who was considered crazy by everyone who knew him except me, everybody who knew him except me, came to my house at 4 in the morning and woke me up tapping on the window of my room. And on that day, located back when the narrator was 9 years old, his cousin Murad shows up to his house at 4 a.m. and taps on the window, and the narrator wakes up to see this. Aram, he said. I jumped out of bed and looked out the window. And Aram jumps out of the bed and rushes to the window. I couldn't believe what I saw, because he can't believe what he sees outside the window. That's a great start for a story. We immediately know that something odd is happening. Something that is so odd that the narrator sort of like, I saw this thing and yet I couldn't believe that I saw it. And let's discuss themes right now. Mahanand has asked what summer means in the story. What does it describe? I think you're asking about the title, Mahanand. We'll discuss that when we come to the very end of the story, and we'll find out some of what the summer here means while we're reading. Yeah? So, first thing that we get in this story at the very beginning is this kind of association between childhood and a time when everything is beautiful. Versus the implication is that adulthood is a point of time when things are a lot less full of magnificence, and life is a lot less delightful, right? The narrator is trying to create this feeling for this story by setting it in childhood and by telling us, oh, this is a point of time when I still thought there was beauty in everything, when I wasn't thinking in terms of practicality and being pragmatic and things like that. I wasn't thinking very seriously about the world or anything like that. I was just living and finding joy in the living. And that's the first theme that we get. And the second theme that we get is that Murad has this particular quality to him. Crazy. So everyone who meets Murad kind of thinks, oh, this one's a little wild. And we'll see why that is in a bit. But the narrator, Aram, doesn't think that about Murad. So Murad and Aram have a different relationship than other people may have to Murad. The narrator probably doesn't judge Murad for the things that he does. And we'll see how that plays out through the rest of the story as well. And we already talked about I couldn't believe what I saw and the strangeness of the event that we end on, like something strange is happening. It wasn't morning yet, but it was summer, and with daybreak not many minutes around the corner of the world, it was light enough for me to know I wasn't dreaming. So it's 4 a.m, it's still quite dark outside, but it's summer, and that's the season that we're in. And Mahanand, that goes a little way towards addressing your question, right? The period of time in which the story is located is summer. And so the summer of the beautiful white horse refers to a particular summer in which there is a beautiful white horse, as we will find out very soon. And with daybreak not many minutes around the corner of the world. What does this mean? The sun is on the verge of rising. This is a poetic way of saying that the sun is on the verge of rising. It was light enough for me to know I wasn't dreaming. Outside, he can see like enough light to gauge that this is really life and he's not like in the middle of some dream. My cousin Murad was sitting on a beautiful white horse, and here is beautiful white horse from the title of our story. Cousin Murad is the one who introduces Aram to this beautiful white horse. I stuck my head out of the window and rubbed my eyes. And Aram is so surprised by seeing the horse that he puts his entire head outside the window and he rubs his eyes. And what does this mean? He's rubbing his eyes partly probably to rub the sleep out of them, but partly also because he can't believe what he's seeing. And so he has to like sort of pass his hands over his eyes to like close them to clear his vision and to see if what he's seeing is really what he's seeing. Yes, he said in Armenia. And that gives us the location of this story, which is Armenia. It's a horse. You're not dreaming. Make it quick if you want to ride. And Murad says, yes, Aram, it's a horse. You're not dreaming. Make it quick if you want to take a ride on the horse. And Murad has basically guessed that Aram is very, very surprised because of the way that Aram is sort of staring in shock. I knew my cousin Murad enjoyed being alive more than anybody else who had ever fallen into the world by mistake. But this was more than even I could believe. What does that sentence mean? I knew my cousin Murad enjoyed being alive more than anybody else who had ever fallen into the world by mistake. Everybody falls into the world by mistake, right? We're all born by accident. It's not like it's a question of chance and a question of coincidence that we're born, and that the person that we are has been born depends on a lot of factors. Our parents meeting, and then marrying, and then having us as their child. So all of these factors go into who is born in the world, and all of that happens almost by like fate. But more than fate, the meaning here really is just accident, by chance. And so that's what the latter half of this phrase means. So more than anyone who's been born. And cousin Murad enjoys being alive, which means cousin Murad enjoys being in the moment and doing things that are unusual and doing things that bring some sort of extra life to him than doing the routine work of the everyday. So doing unusual things is what this particular part of the sentence means. Murad does strange things. But what Murad has done now is very difficult even for Aram to believe. And this gives us a hint as to why Murad might be considered crazy. Because if he's doing things that are unusual all the time, which make him feel more alive, then other people are going to look at him and say he has no sense of how he should behave. And he's crazy. And it's not okay the way that he's behaving. But Aram seems to be able to understand Murad's behavior and comprehend that the reason behind Murad's crazy behavior is that Murad really just wants to feel more life, more adrenaline coursing through his blood. Let me know if all of that's clear. I'm checking the chat right now. Hello, Tanu. We're doing the summer of beautiful white horse. We started Snapshots and we are a little way through it. Let me know if you have any questions so far, and I will check the chat again in a little bit. In the first place, my earliest memories had been memories of horses, and my first longings had been longings to ride. So part of the reason that Aram is so surprised at seeing the horse outside the window is because of his own personal feelings about horses. And that's twofold, right? One, he says that some of the things that he can remember from his early childhood is horses. And the very first desire that he can remember himself having is the desire to ride on a horse. So this idea of like a horse and riding on a horse are very close to Aram's heart. So to see a horse appear outside his window and his cousin Murid say, "Oh, do you want to go for a ride?" It's like his most secret dreams have come alive, and so he's shocked because of that. But this was the wonderful part, and this is the good part of the surprise of waking up to see the horse outside his window. In the second place, we were poor. This was the part that wouldn't permit me to believe what I saw. But there is a less wonderful part to Aram's shock, and that is that they are poor, which means that their family can't afford a horse. So where did Murid find this horse? And that worry is what is not letting Aram entirely enjoy the moment, and it's also stopping him from believing what he sees, and we'll see why that is. We were poor, we had no money, our whole tribe was poverty stricken. Every branch of the Garoglanian family was living in the most amazing and comical poverty in the world. They were poor as in their entire family is poor and they have no money, they're poverty stricken. Aram repeats this 3 times to really drive the fact in that they absolutely cannot afford a horse, right? And then he says that every branch of the Garoglanian family and tribe tells us that this is a big family, and this is a family that's close in the sense that all these different parts of the family know each other and enough to call themselves a tribe, to think of themselves as a collective, and all of them live very similar lives in the sense that they are living in the most amazing and comical poverty. Now this doesn't mean that the poverty is funny, and it doesn't mean that the poverty is incredible. It just means that it's amazing that they are that poor. They are so poor that they are shocked that they are that poor. And it's comical in the sense that it's funny to think about how they are still living even though they are this poor. It's one of those things where it's not really funny, but you say, that's so funny. And you're implying that you're shocked or you're surprised or you can't believe what's going on there. So funny in the sense of strange and odd. Nobody could understand where we ever got money enough to keep us with food in our bellies, not even the old men of the family. They're so poor that they don't even know how they're feeding themselves. And even the old men of the family don't know, which is to say, if anyone knows, it would be the old men of the family, which is to say that there is maybe a particular attribution of wisdom to old men in their family, like there is in popular culture, right? You look at someone with like a long beard and who's really old, and you're sort of like, oh, this person is wise. It's one of those stereotypes that runs around. Most important of all though, we were famous for our honesty. And now we get to the heart of why Aram is shocked. We had been famous for our honesty for something like 11 centuries, even when we had been the wealthiest family in what we like to think was the world. So this particular family, the Garoglanian family, is really famous for their honesty. They're famous for being integrous, they're famous for telling the truth, for being sincere, and they've been famous for this for 11 years. This is what 11 centuries, so 1100 years. This is what they're best known for. And they've been very famous for their honesty, not only when they're poor, at what point of time possibly there isn't necessarily like a lot of money that you have to lie about or anything like that. But even when they were rich, and richness is something that we associate with corruption, right? People who have money tend to be thought of as corrupt in one way or the other. They're probably doing something shady with their money. They've probably done something shady to get that money. But even when this family was wealthy, they were considered to be honest. In what we like to think was the world, that's just a way of saying, oh, we like to think we were the wealthiest family in the world, even though it was probably just like this particular part of Armenia. We were proud first, honest next, and after that we believed in right and wrong. None of us would take advantage of anybody in the world, let alone steal. So there are 3 characteristics that the Garoglanian family enjoys characterizing itself by. One is their pride, and you can see it in the very fact that Aram is going on this like one para rant about honesty, right? They are proud of their honesty also, they are proud of the way they live, and they are honest next. Sincerity is the next thing that they treasure the most. And third, they have morality, they have ethics. And Aram like talks about all of this to tell us that none of these people would even do the smallest crime, like taking advantage of anybody, let alone do a crime that is as terrible as stealing. And so we get to the heart of the issue that Aram has with Murad showing up outside his window, which is that he thinks Murad must have stolen this horse. One key theme that emerges here, and we'll have to keep this in mind for the rest of the text as we read it, is the idea of a family philosophy, right? The idea that a family can be characterized by one common trait. It's a very difficult idea. It's not really a very realistic idea either, but it's the kind of thing that ends up propagated among families, right? You get born into a specific family, and that family has a certain set of values, certain set of traditions, and it takes a lot of pride in those certain sets of values and certain sets of traditions, and you're expected to carry them on. And in this particular case, that particular value is honesty. Being ethical is very important to this particular family, and Aram can't believe that anybody would ever do something different than be ethical, which tells us something very interesting also about the family philosophies that we're born into. We get so used to being in them and listening to them and being around that kind of value system that we don't ever think that we could maybe be different than what those values suggest. I'm going to check for questions. Ayush, longing means desires, wants that you have. So when you say I'm longing for something, you're saying I really want that thing. Hello to Ishu, and yes, Tanu, Aram and Murad belong to the Garuglanian family, and their tribe is famous for their honesty and trustworthiness. And the Garuglanian family is not it's an entirely fictional family name. Consequently, even though I could see the horse so magnificent, even though I could smell it so lovely, even though I could hear it breathing, so exciting. And now Aram is just taking us through like multiple senses. He can see it, he can smell it, he can hear it breathing. And after he like notices each thing about the horse, he adds like an adjective that describes how amazing and incredible this is. Magnificent, lovely, exciting. The smell of horses is really not lovely. So we know that Aram must love horses because he's taking such delight even in being able to smell the horse. I couldn't believe the horse had anything to do with my cousin Murad or with me or with any of the other members of our family, asleep or awake, because I knew my cousin Murad couldn't have bought the horse, and if he couldn't have bought it, he must have stolen it, and I refused to believe he had stolen it. So Aram lists all of these senses through which he can, prove to himself that the horse is there, and then he says, but I still can't believe the horse is there, or that the horse has anything to do with Murad, even though Murad is sitting on top of it, or that the horse has anything to do with me, even though I'm standing here and I'm about to go take a ride on it, because it is impossible for Murad to have bought this horse. If he's not bought it, he must have stolen it, and I cannot believe that he has stolen it. Why? Because no member of the Garuglanian family could be a thief. Again, we see that kind of faith that somebody from the Garuglanian family just could not be a thief. It is impossible for them to be a thief. So even though Aram has evidence in front of his eyes that show him that Murad likely has stolen, he still can't bring himself to believe it, right? He lists his evidence, and yet his belief in his family philosophy overcomes that evidence. And that's the kind of negative aspect to having these kinds of beliefs in our families or beliefs in particular groups of people, right? You can't say, oh, this entire group of people entirely believe in this value and none of them would ever go against that value. It's impossible to generalize like that. It's almost definitely likely that at some point or the other, some of those people must have slipped, done things that are very different. But here, Aram is finding it very, very difficult to swallow. It's also an attempt to sort of convince himself that it's impossible for Murad to have done this, because Aram can't understand that Murad could have done this, that it's really a reality. Because you don't want to think the worst of people in your lives. I stared first at my cousin and then at the horse. There was a pious stillness and humor in each of them, which on the one hand delighted me, and on the other frightened me. Aram looks at his cousin, Aram looks at the horse. There is a pious stillness. Pious means sort of devotional, that kind of sacred stillness. So they're both very still, and humor, and they both seem amused. Now, it's not possible that the horse is, looking amused or devotional. So Aram is just like enveloping the feelings that he sees on his cousin's face to the horse also. So he's expanding it and including both of them in it. And seeing both of these characteristics, seeing both of these feelings, delights him and frightens him. Why does it delight him? Because, this is a really nice moment, and seeing that kind of stillness and the fact that Murad is also clearly enjoying this moment and looking sort of innocent, because that piousness suggests a sort of innocence, it makes Aram happy, partly because you can find delight in being mischievous also, and in doing terrible things also. And on the other hand, it frightens him, because how is Murad just sitting there looking so innocent and looking so amused by the situation when he might have done something terrible? So Aram is kind of torn between just joining in with Murad and carrying on with this adventure, and on the other hand, telling Murad off and being like, what have you done? Murad, I said, where did you steal this horse? And Aram goes ahead and asks Murad straight off, where did you steal this horse? Leap out of the window, he said, if you want to ride. And Murad doesn't reply. He just says, come out of the window, which is to say, don't go through the door, don't disturb the rest of the family, they can't know about this. All of that is implied in leap out of the window. And Murad says, if you want to ride. Which means, he knows that Aram wants to ride, and so he is tempting Aram to come out with him. It was true then. And the fact that Murad hasn't replied at all is an answer to Aram, and he realizes, yes, Murad has stolen the horse. He had stolen the horse. It's confirmation. There was no question about it. There is simply no way to question it anymore. He had come to invite me to ride or not as I chose. And all Murad has come to do is ask Aram if maybe Aram wants to go on a ride. And one interesting thing that we find here is that Murad not answering is an answer, and that's generally true of most situations in which lies and truths are involved, right? If you don't reply to a question, then it must mean that the answer is something the other person doesn't want to hear, which gives away what the answer is. I'm going to check for questions from any of you right now. Hello to Gaurav. Let me know if any of you have any questions. Any particular words that you need help with, or any particular things among the themes that we discussed that you have a question about. Okay, no questions, I think. So we will carry on. Sorry about the screen, it's just glitching a lot. Oh no. Okay, let me know if I'm still here, please, because my screen is glitching very badly and I no longer know if I'm here at all. Okay, and you can see me. Yeah, I think my screen has stopped glitching, which is good news. Hi Chanjeet. Good evening. Yeah, I think I'm back, so let's carry on. Well, it seemed to me stealing a horse for a ride was not the same thing as stealing something else, such as money. Adam says, oh, stealing a horse to ride at once is not the same thing as stealing money. For all I knew, maybe it wasn't stealing at all. And then Adam says, maybe it's not stealing at all. If you were crazy about horses the way my cousin Murad and I were, and now we find out that Murad also really likes horses in the same way that Aram likes horses, it wasn't stealing. And maybe if you care so much about horses, then it's not stealing at all. And we'll talk about this particular paragraph in more detail in a bit. It wouldn't become stealing until we offered to sell the horse, which of course I knew we would never do. And Adam says, unless we try to sell the horse, it's not stealing. And so he's come to like a decision about what stealing is. Let me put on some clothes, I said. All right, he said, but hurry. I leapt into my clothes. I jumped down to the yard from the window and leapt up onto the horse behind my cousin Murad. So Adam says, okay, I'm gonna go put on some clothes. Murad says, quickly. Aram goes and puts on the clothes, jumps out of the window into the yard, and gets onto the horse behind his cousin Murad. And what has made up his mind? This particular paragraph has played a role in him making up his mind, right? And what does he do in this particular paragraph? He thinks about stealing, and he thinks, is it really wrong? Because he doesn't want to do something that's wrong, and he doesn't want to steal. As we can see, like from his long paragraphs going on about the Garuklanian family and how they don't steal, he doesn't want to be the member in the family that breaks that rule, and he also wants to be honest. So he's sort of like, is this stealing? Is this not stealing? And he spends this entire paragraph sort of moving himself to a position from which he can say, this isn't stealing. It won't be stealing unless we sell the horse. And in the process, what Aram is doing, he is redefining the meaning of stealing for himself, right? And he does it in this way. He says, like, experience the value of the object, and then I can't give back the same amount to that person. So stealing a horse is different, and maybe it's not stealing. And then he says, and we really like horses. So because we really like horses, maybe it's not stealing, because like we're just satisfying our wants. And that's the second way he tries to redefine stealing. And the third way he tries to redefine it is by saying it won't be stealing unless like we actually like take this horse and sell it rather than just ride it. If we sell it, then what happens is we're profiting from the horse and we're giving away the object that we stole, which means we can never return it to the person from whom we took it. So Aram is making a distinction here between temporarily taking an object from someone and using it without their permission, and between the act of stealing, which he says is when you take an object and you keep it for yourself and you make yourself some sort of profit off of it. And it's a very interesting redefinition of stealing because it's a new idea, right? We could very easily say, oh, Aram is just like doing this so that he can go on the ride and satisfy his wishes and make himself happy, and that is definitely part of it, because after he does all of this thinking, Aram is like, okay, it's not wrong to do this, so I'm going to go ahead and do this, and he gets down and he gets onto the back of the horse. But it also offers us the possibility of questioning what we think of as stealing and wondering if maybe this particular way of like borrowing something isn't wrong. It's a complicated question, especially considering the fact that Aram and Murad don't have a lot of money, and the fact that this is something that they really want to do. When you're in terrible socio-economic conditions and there's something you really want to do and you end up like taking from somebody else in order to do it, then it's a lot more difficult to just sort of treat it as a black and white issue and say, yeah, this is wrong. There's a little bit of understanding that we can offer here to Murad and Aram and say, it makes sense that this is something you really want, and so you go ahead and do this because you just really want to, and you think that in the process you aren't harming someone, so it's okay for you to do it. And that sort of empathy is a very useful thing to keep in mind while we're reading the rest of the story also. Let me know if that makes sense, if you have any questions. Hello Chanjit, why is today the last day of class? I am a little confused. There are many more days of this class if you want them. If it's school that's ending, I'm really sorry to hear that. It can be like a little tough to have classes end. Hello to Bitu Raj. Ayush, Aram is, well, does anybody else want to tell Ayush why Aram is so worried about the stealing of the horse? Okay, well, Ayush, Aram is worried because when we talked about, that family philosophy that they have, that everyone is like very honest. Murad doing this thing where he steals the horse means that Murad has broken that ethical system that the family lives by, right? He has done something that the entire family is going to think is wrong, and he's done something that Aram has been brought up to think is wrong. And so when he sees that like the horse has been stolen, Aram is having a kind of moral dilemma. He's like, is this wrong? Is this right? Oh no, what do I do? And that's the kind of situation that's making him really worried. I hope you've gotten that. We're going to go ahead into the next paragraph, but leave me a question if that isn't clear to you, and I'll explain it again. That year we lived at the edge of town on Walnut Avenue. Behind our house was the country, vineyards, orchards, irrigation ditches, and country roads. This is a description of the place where they live, and Aram says that year we lived on the edge of town, so probably they've moved around a lot, and they live in this place called Walnut Avenue. And behind their house is the country. The country is the open countryside, right? There aren't a lot of houses there anymore, and we know that makes sense because this is also the edge of town, so it opens up into like emptier spaces. And what is there in those empty spaces? Vineyards. Vineyards are places where they grow plants that you use to make wines, grapes for instance. Orchards. Orchards are places where there are all sorts of different orchards, apple orchards for instance, so a specific kind of fruit or plant or tree is being grown in those spaces. There are irrigation ditches. Irrigation ditches are places for water for the sake of cultivating. Irrigation is water for cultivation. And country roads, which is to say broad, expansive roads. In less than 3 minutes, we were on Olive Avenue. They can move really quickly, and in 3 minutes they're on a completely different avenue, and this one's called Olive Avenue, and we can see that like the places in this town are clearly named by like plants and nuts and things like that. And then the horse began to trot. After they get to Olive Avenue, the horse begins to trot, which is to say it begins to go a little faster. Trotting makes like more noise than like the horse walking. So that's probably why they waited until they were on another road before they began to make the horse trot. The air was new and lovely to breathe. The feel of the horse running was wonderful. So everything is really nice. The horse is running. The feeling of the air against him while the horse is running is lovely. It's fresh air. It's clean to breathe. It's early in the morning. My cousin Murad, who was considered one of the craziest members of our family, began to sing. I mean, he began to roar. At that particular point, Murad starts singing, and he begins to he begins to roar, in the sense he really begins to like scream, sing. He is yelling a song out loud. And why is it, crazy? Why is it that at this particular moment Aram says, my cousin Murad, who is considered one of the craziest members of our family, why does he repeat that characteristic of Murad's to us? Because he's trying to tell us this is evidence that Murad is quite crazy and not entirely sane, because he began to really sing loudly when we are on a stolen horse and going off with it somewhere. They should be trying their best to stay silent and quiet, right? Because they shouldn't be found out. But here Murad clearly doesn't care. He really does just live in the moment and not consider consequences. So he just starts singing really loudly, and he's happy, he's enjoying himself. Every family has a crazy streak in it somewhere, and my cousin Murad was considered the natural descendant of the crazy streak. Aram tells us that every family probably has a line of insanity in it somewhere. He's not being very serious when he says this. He just means that there are people in every family who do things that are considered abnormal or not usual, and in their family it's Murad who is considered the person to whom the streak has been given. He's the descendant of the streak, which is to say that they're thinking about the streak as something that is passed down through the family, right? Murad inherits it from whoever was there before him, and before him was our uncle, this man with a powerful head of black hair and the largest moustache in the San Joaquin Valley. A man so furious in temper, so patient that he stopped anyone from talking by roaring, "It is no harm, pay no attention to it." So before Murad, the person who was supposed to be the crazy person in family is Uncle Khusro, and he is a really large man, and he has a lot of hair, and he has a really large mustache. And what is very odd about him is that he is really angry. He is so angry and so irritable that whenever anybody talks, he just yells at them and he says, "It's no harm, pay no attention to it." So whatever people say, he's just like, "Don't think about it." Which is to say, don't talk about it. I'm being bothered by you talking about it. That was all, no matter what anybody happened to be talking about. Once it was his own son Arak running 8 blocks to the barber's shop where his father was having his moustache trimmed to tell him their house was on fire. This man, Khusro, sat up in the chair and roared, "It is no harm, pay no attention to it." The barber said, "But the boy says your house is on fire." So Khusro roared, "Enough, it is no harm, I say." So we find out that Khusro just does the same thing to everybody, no matter what it is they tell him. Once his own son, whose name runs 8 blocks is a certain like distance on the streets. Arak runs like 8 blocks to the barber shop where his father is getting his moustache trimmed, and he tells him, "Oh, the house is on fire." And Khusro is just like, "Don't pay any attention to it." And the barber is like, "But he said your house is on fire." And Khusro is like, "It's fine, there's no harm." So he's not really paying attention to what is being said. He's just automatically, reflexively saying, "It's fine, we don't have to pay attention to it." So that's the particular brand of crazy that Khusro had. My cousin Murad was considered the natural descendant of this man, although Murad's father was Zorab, who was practical and nothing else. Murad is considered the natural descendant, which means the person who comes. So Murad is the person who follows Khusro. And generally when you say descendant, you're talking in terms of bloodlines, right? You're talking about whose child you are and who's your parent. But Khusro isn't his actual father. His actual father is someone called Zorab. He's crazy at all. So completely different from the way that Murad is. That's how it was in our tribe. A man could be the father of his son's flesh, but that did not mean that he was also the father of his spirit. And so Aram tells us, Zorab is the father of Murad and his body, in the sense that he is the blood father of Murad, but that doesn't mean that he is the father of Murad's spirit, which is to say that he and Zorab, Murad and Zorab are very different in the energies that they have, the kind of soul. And the soul that Murad seems to have been inspired by of Khusro's, right? That's the person to whom he is most similar in terms of spirit. The distribution of the various kinds of spirit of our tribe had been from the beginning capricious and vagrant. What does this line mean? The various kinds of spirit of our tribe? Different people have different kinds of personalities in our tribe, and they've always been distributed, which is to say they've always been seen in different kinds of people all along. Capricious and vagrant. Capricious means flighty, not really like ordered. Vagrant means kind of just running around here and there without like following order and law. So both those words are trying to tell us there's no sort of sense to the way that like people's personalities are. Different people just have lots of different personalities. Personality isn't being passed on through genetics. That's kind of what we're getting here. Yeah, so what we're getting is that, well, when Aram says all of this, we can't take it like entirely literally, right? We can't think about this like some sort of spirit is being passed on through like some kind of lottery system. No, we're going to think about it a little more figuratively, and we're going to take the heart of what Aram is saying from those lines, which is that children and parents can be entirely different, and that is something that they've seen a lot in their tribe. They've seen families full of all sorts of distributions of people, and that's what we're getting from that particular passage. Let me know if that makes sense. Tanu, I can see that you've asked for like MCQ based questions. I was thinking we could run MCQs after we've done all of snapshots, but if you all want to do like, yeah, Ayush, I will be conducting a Menti for this chapter, but it'll be on some other day. We can do it chapter by chapter also. I was thinking that if we did 3 chapters, it would be a bit more of a challenge for all of you. So we might do a Menti after we're done with the 3 chapters in snapshots. If you all want, we can also do it like after each lesson. That should be possible. These are quite long lessons. Anyway, let me know which you prefer in the chat and I will check it. We rode and my cousin Murad sang. For all anybody knew, we were still in the old country where, at least according to some of our neighbors, we belonged. We let the horse run as long as it felt like running. At last, my cousin Murad said, "Get down, I want to ride alone." So Murad and Aram are riding and Murad is singing, and Aram says, still in the old country. The old country, it's not entirely clear what this means, right? But we'll find out a little bit later in the chapter that Armenia seems to have changed in certain ways and maybe been in ways. And so their lifestyles have changed very dramatically. Back in this old country, at least, riding a horse and singing loudly like this would have been something very usual. It suggests that this old country was one in which life was very joyous and a lot more free. And the neighbors around the Garoklinian family's current location seem to think that, you know, these people belong in that age still, and they don't belong in the new country, which is to suggest that the new country is maybe somewhere that is a lot more civilized in the ways that we're familiar with the meaning of the word civilization, quieter probably, less loud and less vibrant. And they let the horse run as long as the horse felt like it wanted to run, and then at one point Murad says, "Okay, get down, I want to ride alone." "Will you let me ride alone?" I asked, and Aram says, "I also want to ride alone, will you let me?" "That is up to the horse," my cousin said. "Get down." And Murad says, "The horse will decide. You get down now." "The horse will let me ride," I said, and Aram says, "Yeah, of course the horse will let me ride." And that is up to the horse is a very interesting phrase. It means that Murad is trying to give an option to the horse, and that isn't to say that he is going to that he thinks the horse is going to open its mouth and tell him whether or not it wants Aram to ride him. Right? For the sake of your safety, he said, "Let us hope so. Get down." Alright, I said, but remember you've got to let me try to ride alone. So Murad says, okay, yeah, sure. We'll see if like the horse will let you ride. I have a way with horses. So Murad is also showing off in this moment, right? He's saying, oh, I'm good with horses, but you're not good with horses. And well, if you're good enough at riding, then like maybe you'll be able to successfully ride. And Aram rises to the challenge and he's sort of like, anything that you can do, I can also do. And this is a thing that happens with siblings a lot. That kind of rivalry is what we're seeing here. And then we see Murad respond to the challenge by saying, oh, for the sake of you being safe, let's hope you do have a way with a horse. Which is to say, he's doubting the fact that Aram has a way with a horse. He's sort of like, I'm not sure you have this skill, but sort of in a threatening way, in an implicit threat way, he's like, oh, let's hope you're telling the truth, because otherwise you won't be very safe at the end of this ride. And then he makes Aram get down, and Aram reiterates, oh, you've got to like let me try. I got down and my cousin Murad kicked his heels into the horse and shouted, Wazir, run. The horse stood on its hind legs, snorted and burst into a fury of speed that was the loveliest thing I had ever seen. My cousin Murad raced the horse across a field of dry grass to an irrigation ditch, crossed the ditch on the horse, and 5 minutes later returned, dripping wet. So Aram gets down, Murad kicks his heels into the horse, which is a way of telling the horse what to do, and he shouts, run. Wazir seems to be like either the name of the horse or the name that Murad is using for the horse here. Okay, I've seen you both say that like you want Menti after the lesson, so okay, let's do it like after we're done with both parts of the lesson. And then the horse stands up on its hind legs, which means it rears up, it snorts, it makes a noise, and then it runs really fast across dry grass and to an irrigation ditch, which is, as we talked about, space for water, for cultivation. He crosses the ditch on the horse, so he walks across the water on the horse, and then he comes back, obviously drenched in the water. Yeah. And so, two things that we get here, the sibling rivalry, some showing off, which we already talked about. And another thing is that Murad does have a way with the horse, right? We can see that the horse is responding to his command really well. And what is that way? We'll talk about it in a bit when we get further into the lesson. The sun was coming up, so the day is starting. The secrecy of their endeavor, which was taking place, before the day was fully starting, before people were really waking up, is coming to an end, because when people wake up, they'll have to take the horse away because they've stolen the horse. Now it's my turn to ride, I said. My cousin Murad got off the horse. Ride, he said. I leapt to the back of the horse and for a moment knew the most awful fear imaginable. The horse did not move. So Aram says, oh, I'm going to ride the horse, and Murad's like, fine, go ahead. And Aram gets onto the horse, and with this sinking feeling in his chest, he realizes the horse is not moving. Sorry, my throat is really dry. So for all that Aram was trying to say, oh, yeah, I know how to ride, he might not know how to ride, and he's realizing it at this moment. Kick into his muscles, my cousin Murad said. What are you waiting for? We've got to take him back before everybody in the world is up and about. And Murad's like, kick into his muscles to try to tell him that, he has to get moving. Why are you waiting? What is this pausing all about? We've got to like rush, finish this off, and then put him somewhere safe before everyone wakes up. And this is a consequence of that sibling rivalry moment that we saw. There's been like a little bit of failure on Aram's part, and Murad is mocking him a little bit. Don't wait around forever. I kicked into the muscles of the horse. Once again it reared and snorted, then it began to run. I didn't know what to do. And this is our problem, right? Aram doesn't know what to do, and so when he kicks into the muscles of the horse, which is the only instruction that Murad has given him, it reacts as it's supposed to, which is rearing and snorting, and then it begins to run. And Murad hasn't given him any more instructions. And Aram also didn't ask for any more instructions, and he doesn't know what to do. So, instead of running across the field to the irrigation ditch, the horse ran down the road to the vineyard of Dikran Halabian, where it began to leap over vines. The horse leaped over 7 vines before I fell. Then it continued running. So instead of going where Murad took it and then coming back, the horse goes down a vineyard, and it's the vineyard of a specific person called Dikran Halabian, and it's beginning to leap over the vines. The vines are like fixed to wires, poles kind of, because they creep around things, right? And then it starts leaping over those poles, and it leaps over 7 of them, and Aram is completely out of control, so he's not controlling the horse at all. The horse is doing whatever it wants, and he falls off the horse. After he falls off, it just keeps on going. My cousin Murad came running down the road. "I'm not worried about you," he shouted. "We've got to get that horse. You go this way and I'll go this way. If you come upon him, be kindly. I'll be near." So Murad comes and he doesn't care about what's happened to Aram. He's just like, "I don't care about you. We have to get the horse." So his first priority is the horse, and he makes up a plan for it. He's like, "You go this way, I'll go this way. If you come upon him, don't do anything. Just treat him fine. Be kindly, like treat him like well. Don't scare him or anything. I'll be near. Just say I'll take care of it." So 1, we see that Aram doesn't know how to ride, and 2, we see Murad's priority is the horse. I continued down the road, and my cousin Murad went across the field toward the irrigation ditch. It took him half an hour to find the horse and bring him back. "All right," he said, "jump on. The whole world is awake now." "What will we do?" I said. "Well," he said, "we'll either take him back or hide him until tomorrow morning." So they both go on different sides, and Murad is the one who finds the horse, and then he brings the horse back, and he says, "Okay, get on the horse. Everyone's awake now. The day has begun. We have to get off the roads, because people can't just find us in the middle of the road standing with a stolen horse." And Aram's like, "What will we do? What are we going to do about the horse? What are we going to do about the situation?" And Murad says, "Oh, we'll either take him back to the place he stole him from, or we'll hide him until tomorrow." He didn't sound worried, and I knew he'd hide him and not take him back. Not for a while, at any rate. He doesn't sound worried in the sense he doesn't sound sad or stressed at the thought of having to let the horse go. And so Aram deduces correctly that Murad is going to just hide the horse for a while and not take the horse back, but not forever, right? Only for a while. He's just going to keep the horse for a little while. "Where will he hide him?" I asked. I said, "I know a place," he said. "How long ago did you steal this horse?" I said. Aram's like, "Oh, where are you going to hide him?" And Murad's like, "Oh, I know a place." And Aram's like, "How long ago did you steal this horse?" And what's happening here is that when Murad says, "I know a place," what he's saying is, "Oh, I know a place to hide this horse," which suggests he's hidden this horse before. So Aram realizes that probably Murad has had this horse for some time, and so he's like, "When did you steal the horse?" It suddenly dawned on me that he had been taking these early morning rides for some time, and had come for me this morning only because he knew how much I loved to ride. And at that moment, Aram realizes that Murad has probably been doing this every morning for a while now, and he's only come and picked Aram up today because he knows that Aram also wants to ride a horse. So until now, Aram has sort of been thinking, "Oh, Murad stole it now and he brought it to me now, but Murad stole it quite a while ago, and Murad has been keeping this theft secretive until today." "Who said anything about stealing a horse?" he said. And even now, Murad doesn't admit to stealing the horse. He just says, "Who said I stole a horse?" And that's all he says. "Anyhow," I said, How long ago did you begin writing every morning? And so Aram rephrases his question. He says, okay then, how long ago did you start writing every morning? Which is to say, how long ago did you steal this horse? Yeah, we can see that it's a long-term secret. And here, an interesting thing that's happening is that Murad is still refusing to call it stealing, but Aram has openly started thinking about it as stealing, and he's even called it a theft, right? He says, how long ago did you steal this horse? So he's being very open about the fact that this is stealing, and Murad is still not being very open about it. He's being a little cagey. Not until this morning, he said. So Murad says, oh, I only started writing this morning. And Aram's like, are you telling the truth? I said, and Aram isn't sure that Murad is telling the truth, especially because of that line where he said, I know a place, which seemed to say, oh, I've done this before. Of course not, he said, but if we found out that's what you're to say, I don't want both of us to be liars. All you know is that we started writing this morning. And Murad says, I'm not telling the truth, I'm lying, but if anybody finds out this happened, then that's what you're going to say. You're going to say that we started writing this morning because that's all you know. You don't know anything else. And I'm not going to tell you when I really started writing, because then you'd have to lie for me also. And then we'd both be liars. So he's trying to protect Aram from having to lie in this particular line. Alright, I said, and Aram accepts. He walked the horse quietly to the barn of a deserted vineyard, which at one time had been the pride of a farmer named Fetwaji. There were some oats and dry alfalfa in the barn. Oats, alfalfa, things that you feed a horse, they're in the barn. Whether they've been left over by Fetwajian or whether Murad has been keeping the horse in this barn for some time and feeding the horse these things, we don't know. But he's basically hiding this horse in a specific place that's been deserted. And that is the extent of our content for today. One thing that I want to say here is that this is a very interesting protective trait that we see in Murad, and we'll talk about that part of him a little bit later. My throat really hurts, sorry. But thank you for being here today. We've hit the end of the first part, and we will do the second part on Saturday, I think. Yes, we will do part 2 of the lesson on Saturday, so I hope to see you then again, and we will finish it off then, and then we will do a quiz on the chapter. For those of you who are still around, I want to spend a couple of seconds telling you about Unacademy and the features that Unacademy has to offer. There is an Unacademy app that you can download off Google Play Store or off the Apple App Store, and you can try a lot of features on it for free. You can just use my code for that. It's THAR01, and it's a lot of really nice features, right? You can ask a doubt, you can take live tests, there are a lot of mock quizzes that you can take. So these are all facilities that you can access on the Unacademy Learners app if you download it off the Play Store. I also want to let you know there's something called Unacademy Plus, where you get access to a lot more content, like the content that you get on YouTube, thorough coverage of all the syllabus that you have for all of your exams, study material, more practice tests, more live tests, and all of it costs like a certain amount of money, and these are the prices for the different durations of time in which you can take subscriptions. You can see that the per month cost is a lot less when it's for 24 months than it is for a 6-month subscription. So you should keep that in mind if you're signing up for an Unacademy Plus subscription. There's also something called Unacademy Iconic, where you get access to one-on-one education, which is to say somebody will work with you very closely to help you figure out what you're good at, what you're not good at, whatever doubts you have, and you will, instead of a collective learning experience, you'll basically get complete education, complete attention from an educator. So very individualized learning. You'll get weekly reports, and your parents can also be in touch with the educators to figure out how you're doing. So it's like an alternate school system, but only for you. And these are the prices for Unacademy Iconic. Again, you can see that the per month cost is a lot less if you take it for a long duration of time. You can also use a referral code for getting a 10% discount on Plus and Iconic, and my referral code is THVR01. All of that said, thanks again for being here today, and please leave a like if you like the lesson. Leave me feedback in the comments. Let me know what's working for you, what's not working for you. Do share if you think that people would like to watch this, and definitely subscribe if you are looking for more content like this. I will see you all again for the second part of the lesson on Saturday.